and introduce our two performers, poets of the night. Um, so Yesika is Salgado is a Los Angeles-based Salvadorian poet who writes about her family, her culture, her city, and her fat brown body. She has shared her work in venues and campuses throughout the country. Salgado is a two-time National Poetry Slam finalist and the recipient of the 2020 International Latino Book Award in Poetry. Her work has been featured in Los Angeles Times, Teen Vogue, Univision, CNN, NPR, TEDx, and many digital platforms. She's an internationally recognized body positive activist and the writer of the column Suelta por Remezcla. Yesika is the author of the bestsellers Corazon, Tesoro, and Hermosa, published with Not a Cult. And our other poet for the night is Karla Cordero, who is a descendant of the Chichimeca people from northern Mexico, a Chicana poet, educator, and artivist, raised along the borderlands of Calsico, California. Karla is the editor of Spit Journal, an online literary review for poetry and social justice, and founder of Voice for Change. Karla's first full-length collection, How to Pull Apart the Earth, is a 2019 San Diego Book Award winner and an award-winning finalist for the 2019 International Book Awards and finalist for the 2020 International Latino Book Awards. She currently serves as a professor of creative writing and English at Mira Costa in San Diego City College. And I gotta say, I'm super geeked that both of you, I love Yesika's work. I read all your books. And I just picked up Karla's book and I love it. I'm falling in love with it as we speak. So I'm so excited to have you both here, and I cannot wait to hear you all read. So yeah, let's go.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us. I love that this is intimate. Intimate readings are really, and then y'all feel so warm too. It's like there's so much energy here that this feels so good. So I'm Yesika, and my beloved friend here is Karla, and together we're Juntas. That's funny. Together we're Juntas, which is they're saying together again, but but we Karla and I have been published by Not a Cult, and even before that, we were in community with each other. Many, like poetry community, spoken word, slam, and many times we were often the only, if not a few of the like Latinas in a room, and or even women in a room many other times. And so throughout time, and then once we were published or Not a Cult, and we did a show to we been have the fortune of doing a couple of events together. We did one in San Diego with Rudy Francisco, and then we did the Barnes and Noble, and we were like, we should like do a show together or a project together or something. And then the pandemic happened, and we decided that digital things in some way are easier to make happen. And so we're still fleshing out like what we are in our partnership and what it is, but out of a space of like deep respect and love and appreciation for each other's work. And I think it's really beautiful that we show also by coming together that sisterhood is really important, and to support each other. And although many folks would think that we'd be in competition with each other because we're the Latinas in many spaces, that's not what it is, because Karla's voice is very beautiful and unique, as is my own. And we only complement each other even more. And that's like truly exciting. And to be able to like come to like with our powers combined, right? Like and bring poetry forward. And so it's really, really, truly an honor. And much of what our story, why we're called Juntas, is because uh, that's what we are. We're together, right? And then even then in Juntas, it carries double meaning in Spanish because it means like together, but it also is a word often for meetings and for and where things get done and conversation gets pushed forward. And that's what it is. We write so much about home in the many ways it means to both of us, and you know, colonization, gentrification, migration, all of those things are very prevalent in both of our work, and we're people that are constantly trying to rewrite what we know to be home within our work. And that's kind of the focal point of what we're doing. And with that being said, I don't know if I left anything out, Karla. No, we're good. All right, I'm gonna jump into my poems, and then I'm gonna hand it over to Karla, and then she's gonna read some poems for y'all. And at the end, we're gonna have a Q&A. And since we're such a small group, it's great because we get to like answer anything that y'all want to ask, and we don't have to worry about like, okay, only blah blah blah, whatever. So that's the coolest thing. And so I'm going to be reading from my latest book, which it was released in 2019. And this little baby's an award winner. And she's called Hermosa. And the really, really cool thing about Hermosa was that Karla was also nominated for this award. And so we were like in it together. And like literally, we were both gonna be happy if the other one won. Like it was one of those things. Like I honestly wasn't even like, I'm like, Karla's gonna win. I'm like, Karla's gonna win this, like, cause duh, right? And then so then like it was so much that when we were watching the ceremony, I didn't even have clothes on. Like I was just sitting there. It was really hot, and I was sitting there, I think like in my pajamas. And then I was just like, I won. Like they announced the winner, and I'm like, I won. I'm like, now I have to go put on clothes. So I could take a picture and like say thank you and all that. But it was really, really beautiful to be able to share the excitement of being nominated for my first award with a sister in poetry. And so anyway, Hermosa. And she's part of a trilogy. My trilogy is, there's not a name for the trilogy, but the books in the trilogy or Corazón Tesoro Hermosa, and the reason why they're a trilogy is because they all very much explore my identity and explore what it is that I call home. Corazón is based a lot around my nostalgia and my love for Salvador and relationships and the complicatedness that all of that is. And then Tesoro talks a lot about the woman in my family and how they had to survive the men. And Hermosa talks a lot about me being a woman finding her voice in Los Angeles. And so, yeah. So here we go. It's warm up here. Okay, we're gonna get in it. Today, I am not a writer. I am my halted Spanish and insecurities. I am fingers that know letters but not grammar. My only degree is my library card. I read someone else's words and shrink, turn into a speck of envy. Don't know how not to weigh my work against theirs. Can't stop feeling like I'm a cheap magician's trick. If I move too quickly, I'll give myself away. You'll learn. I am only stacking these words together to pull myself out. I don't know how you got here. I wasn't trying to save you. All I have been doing is staying alive. And this piece is called you know what? Let me go back and we're gonna do this piece. This poem is a really special poem for me. I really truly think that we often forget, and the reason why I open often with the poem that I just read with y'all today is because many times we forget the poet after the poem's been written, right? Like when we're reading stuff, we get to consume it and interpret it what it means to us, and then it becomes words that get us through whatever or inspire us or encourage us or whatever it is that we're getting from the material. And sometimes we completely divorce the writer from it. And I think that that's, it's beautiful that that can happen with work, but I think specifically when we're reading work by marginalized voices, right? By women, by brown women, by like I'm a fat brown woman, and I feel like that it's a voice that's important in literature to be recognized, and I don't allow people to divorce me from my words because it's very important to have that context when you're reading it, because when I'm writing about love, it's not just some brand like I don't love the way a white thin woman will love. It's just not going to happen, and it's just the way that it's just a fact, right? And but you need to have that context to be able to like truly absorb what it is that I'm speaking about. And that being said, I wrote a poem. I had been wanting to write this poem my whole life about my father, and then I finally got it out the way that I had it in my head, and like it came out in one sitting, and I read it at the Poetry Lounge, which is an open mic where I kind of found my poetry legs. And I read it on stage, and I realized that I wasn't ready to share this in public with people, so I put it away and I lost it. And I was crying about it one day to a friend, and I was like, I lost this poem that like I had had been trying to write for all my life and da da whatever. And we weren't friends when I read that, but she was in the audience, and something had moved her to record me perform the poem. So she had the audio, a voice note of me performing, of me reading the poem, and send it to me. And I was able to transcribe my poem again from my own voice, that someone that didn't love me yet was thoughtful enough to record. And so it was like my poem came back for me. And I think that and so I had to put it in a book. And so I'm going to share it with you now. The first one is a quiet Sunday afternoon. I find myself holding his hand so often, there is no need for me to tell him I love him. At dinner, I prefer to eat from his plate instead of mine, and he's tender, so tender. He's tender, so tender, I pretend to fall asleep with my head on his chest just to hear him breathing, as if I were inside of him, as if I were a vital organ, as if this was the reason I was made. He often calls me his heart, and I never doubt it. I know the second one has come home by the slam of the door. It is 3 a.m. and every light is on. His music is loud and angry like him. And when I ask him what's the matter, beg him to go to bed, he answers in sounds like a hand slapped to a face, or a body slammed to a wall, or glass broken on a cheek. And I try not to cry because my tears are like blood to a shark, and he is a shark in the deepest part of the night. There is so much yelling. I wonder why the police haven't been called. So much anger, I fear the sun won't raise in time to save either one of us. I know the third one is full of jokes that sound like insults. His humor is cheap and easy, like that vodka he likes to drink. The fourth one never remembers how much he's hurt me. When we bump into each other in the kitchen the next morning, he won't look me in the eye. His apologies come as a mumbled, I love you, as a hurried kiss to a forehead before he rushes off to work. I resent him, sometimes even hate him. It is so difficult to love him, but if I don't, who else will? Who else will forgive him? Who else will save him? Who else will make him want to change? And the fifth one I wished for every single day of my life. Every time I blew out a birthday candle or I knelt in a church pew, I begged to God to send him to me soon. And when he did, when God finally gave me a sober father, he was so broken, so apologetic, so brittle, so willing to make it work. All I could do was forget everything that had ever come before him. And the day he left me, as a sudden exhale of wind, as a slight twitch of a foot, as a hand I wouldn't release, all I could do was remember the first one. How as a little girl, I would pretend to fall asleep on my father's chest just to hear him breathing, as if I were an appendage of his body, as if I were a vital organ, as if he had never become anyone else other than the man who called me his heart and never let me doubt it. Thank you. Oh, that poem. Okay. Yakasi. Your parents say goodbye while they're still sitting at the dinner table, and they stand with their keys in their hands and say it again. They move to the door and say it some more. Then the driveway. When the car turns on, your Theo leans a hand on the window while they keep saying goodbye. And then mommy forgets something, so she runs back inside, and they all stand around the car for some more. And you fall asleep for a little bit. When you wake up, you're still there. So you get back out of the car to play with your cousins, but Papi calls you back in, and Theo smacks the car one more time. Thea waves, and you know that this time you're leaving for real. Finally. But you wished it had taken just a little bit longer. When you grow up and you are a full-blown adult in love, and that love goes sour, you threaten to leave. You sit at the table and say, I am gone. Some days pass and you stand with your keys in your hand. You swear you're going to do it. But weeks later, you make it to the door, say goodbye some more, make it to the driveway, but your lover leans in, promises the right things with one hand on your thigh. You linger, but you swear it's only for a little, grow numb and forget about breaking up. It's like you fall asleep, settle into staying. You are all in again, but remember why you have to go. This time, it is real. Finally, you are gone, but you wish your goodbye had taken just a little bit longer. Thank you. All right, so this is gonna be my last poem, and then I'm gonna hand it over to Karla, and she's gonna read some beautiful poems for you. And I was thinking, I'm like, what am I gonna read? Am I gonna read like my like, you know what? I had a run in with an ex a couple of days ago, and I feel like this poem's in my spirit. You know, sometimes like exes wake up, like y'all don't answer the phone and they're calling you because the eclipse and stuff woke something up, and like if they come around, they're on some fuck shit, and just don't do it. Um, don't do it. But yeah, an ex called, and I was just like, I'm gonna answer the phone. What could be the harm? And then I was crying. So then I was just like, no, don't answer the phone. But I this is a reminder to myself, and hopefully, if any of you need that reminder too, it's called Boomerang. When you come checking on me, know that I haven't fallen into the fire. I picked myself up and said I could still do it without him. When I heard you had a new girlfriend, I didn't imagine her body, and I didn't wish my own away. Instead, I worked, I planned, I opened a savings account. I wrote, I smoked on cold nights, I drank on good nights. I cut off 12 inches of my hair. I took pictures, I booked a cruise, flew to San Francisco. I laid in a bed with white sheets, called men I had stopped calling when I loved you. I bought jewelry. I took myself to dinner, to the movies alone, a bar alone, went to concerts with friends, stood close to the stage, sang loud with my face to the sky, my skin as soft as you left it. When you come checking on me, when your palms itch at the sound of my name, know that I haven't fallen into the fire. Baby, I became it. Thank you so much. And Karla, take it away, my love.
Yeah.
Woo woo!
Y'all give it up for
you.
Yesika Salgado. Y'all, if you want to unmute yourself and throw some love, feel free to do so. Use the reaction, use the chat.
Woo woo!
Love for all the poems she given us tonight, this evening.
Thank you.
Ooh, you getting so much love. Okay, good. You getting flames. Ooh, we getting onomatopoeias for you. You getting snap. Manifest queen. You getting some fire emojis. We got some bleh. Oh, okay. I see what's happening. That's it. Okay, good.
Love it.
Thank you so much for coming through this evening. Thank you so much, Yesika. Thank you so much, Sims Library, for having us and collaborating. It is an absolute treat to find ways to build community with our people in the middle of a pandemic. And as Yesika had said, we are the Juntas tour. What you end up finding out as an artist, and I'm sure there's so many artists and brilliant writers here with us today, is that when you go on tour, whether pandemic or not, or when you're doing readings or book signings, sometimes it just feels like a really solitude act because you're amongst so much community, but you're one artist. And so coming together as Juntas with Yesika really gave us as artists a community to talk about art, to talk about healing, to talk about how we can use language to call ourselves back home. And so that's kind of our mission of what we are doing, is thinking of ways of how language, how words charter this revolutionary act, this demand to give us the freedom to create welcome mats back into our own bodies, into our own homes, into the various ways we see those places of refuge. So I'm super excited to share 4 poems with y'all tonight. I was inspired by the poet Rita Dove, and she said the following: We all have a song within us that can never be extinguished. What you do is try to sing it the best you can. We thirst for beauty, and as long as you continue to thirst for beauty, we will always survive. So I'm gonna sing, no, I'm not gonna sing, I can't sing. I'm gonna read 4 poems that find its own ways to sing. I'm gonna start with prayer, because prayer was the first thing my mama taught me when we were home. And then that's gonna manifest itself into other things. So if y'all are with me, let me know, drop it in the chat, drop it in the reactions. And we're gonna start with a poem called Prayer. Sometimes prayer appears in the shape of 6 Mexicans in a bedroom. We squeeze rosary beads and wish a pomegranate would bloom from our hands and into our mouths. Instead, mama says every decade shoots through the popcorn ceiling, cuts through the clouds, knocks at La Virgen or baby Jesus or whoever clocks in that day to transcribe a Hail Mary and an Our Father, to resurrect a mother's dead child, to provide a safe path across a grave offering desert. And I imagine prayer works like this. A saint picks mama's prayer from a jar like a seed, and mama prays for Tia's cancer, for dad's stiff joints, for the dying dog at the border. She says, don't forget to say your amens or Jesucito won't hear us. Amen, amen, amen. And in the palm of a glowing saint, a seed demands to be a garden. All right, y'all, give it up for seeds. Give it up for prayer. I'm gonna do 3 more poems for y'all, and that's kind of the opening. How do we sing? How do we use language to sing? And a lot of time in childhood, our parents, our guardians give us the gift of prayer, lighting a candle, meditating. So know you already got the gift, right? And then how do we put it into language? So I'm gonna continue. Now I'm thinking in childhood, prayer in the version of music that came into my life and played a big role. So this poem is called How Aretha Saves. Quote, everybody wants respect, and in their own way, 3-year-olds would like respect and acknowledge it in their own terms. Aretha Franklin, end quote. Back then, in the summer sun, it would beat down on all that it touched. And the metal patio benches boil like hot caldo that no one would want in July. How the brown sparrows sit on their branches, stiff as stones to preserve their feather movement for when father calls these days, a day without a street dog's bark. So quiet you could hear death cook into the savory bones of baby back ribs and carne asada sizzling on the grill, the loudest of music next to the boombox blasting Aretha Franklin. Her sound sweet as iced tea. We swear it would send a wind and turn down a day's heat by 5 degrees. My sisters and I would cool our temp hot bodies in bathing suits and cannonball into the swimming pool. We take turns holding the garden hose like a microphone, our mosquito bite chest rising to sit front row to witness all this joy as we howl, respect, 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 meaning we sing a language we crave to repel the stubborn chlorine out our face, meaning we shout, say respect to us, give us respect, we say to the blue water's desire to drown our bodies when dad ain't looking. I split through pool water, close my lungs and submerge my black hair swaying like Medusa's child. I recite Aretha Franklin, my voice bubbling to the surface, respect, respect, respect. Find out what it means to me. What it means to me is holding on to each lyric in my throat like a life jacket I never knew I thought I'd need to save me and my girlhood from keeping us alive, saving us, always keeping us above water. So give it up for Aretha Franklin. Give it up. So she was one of the first voices I heard as a little girl growing up. My dad would play music all the time. Loved Aretha Franklin. And that was the first time I learned about like the abstract concept of respect and how to spell it. And I remember as a little girl spelling it underwater, holding our breaths. And it was like the best spelling battle ever. So this next poem I want to read is kind of a silly poem, but in the midst of pandemic, in the midst of chaos, right? We try to find gratitude. We try to find the appreciation of the microcosms of the world, the smallest things that bring us joy. And so in doing so, I wrote this poem. Here we go. Gratitude to all things that resurrect, aside from the Lord on Sunday. Somehow I was convinced resurrection was only for a man leaving a tomb. And perhaps I blame the Bible. Perhaps I blame myself for overlooking God's synonyms for rising. So perhaps I forgive myself, how I never thought to praise my own flesh, little machine of muscle that levitates her own weight from the mattress to floor, to Monday, to days of madness, testing my ability to stay a mountain. So let this moment be grace at the kitchen table to thank the bagel who bears the heat wave, toaster of sacrifice, arise to crisp only to witness its burial, buried in cream cheese, or avocado ripeness, or perhaps a side alongside huevo con winis, or scrambled eggs, or omelet, and oh Lord, let us praise the brown egg, you tiny bird death, never seeing the light of feather, whose purpose is called to rise, to yoke into yellow textured volume, to complement the iced coffee with its condensation feeding a cloud's belly, belly full of rain for the garden in all its growing. Let us praise the bean sprout in its raised bed. O smallest of miracles, brave leaf who lifts its arms to the largest of burning stars. And dare I say it, let us praise the nipple who hugs the breeze and speaks through t-shirts like tiny roofs that house my heart. And shall I praise the holiest of risings, swollen womb, 9 months growing in my sister's belly, birthing my niece. So praise my niece, who runs like a tugboat at sea, who raises her knees to sail, breaking through every wild shrub, like this poem breaking this blank page in her silence, like the black ink of language marching like ants home, together to see tomorrow. So let us praise this page, you slow ending, you funeral I hate, yet take joy in its making, so I too can make space for the skeleton of words that will rise and show us what hope looks like when it speaks again and again and again. I say hallelujah, amen. Give it up, y'all, for gratitude. So if y'all got gratitude, y'all got stuff to write about and be thankful for.
Karla, I hadn't heard that poem before, and I'm like,
oh, this a new poem. This
it's
new
beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
And you just inspired me to write a different poem, but like beautiful. I'm sorry, like I'm very stunned by it. I'm very stunned by it, and I needed to acknowledge that. Like, I fucking love you. Okay, thank you. Bye. Bye, everybody.
I love you too. And I'm not gonna cry, but it's like, yo, it's been a hard past, it's like been a hard year, you know what I'm saying? And so how do we hang on? How do we survive? How do we grab hope by the wrist and push it into the light? It's like, you gotta find joy, mi gente, you gotta find joy. And so I'm trying to figure that out. What does joy look like? And so I invite you all to write to that. Send it to us. I want to read it too. What does gratitude look like? What rises every day and pushes forward to find the sun, right? So I'm gonna read one more poem for y'all. This poem's a little different, but I think it works in this idea of singing and prayer in a very different way. So we pray for gratitude, we pray for joy, but we can also pray for the bullshit of life, like to get out the door, you know? So this poem was inspired by my little sister. So backstory real quick. She turned 21 a while back and she goes, I only want one thing from you. And she says, I want you to go clubbing with me. And I don't do that. I'm like this old lady grading papers, you know, and shit. And so I go, fine, I'm gonna go. So I did the whole thing. I put the dress, I put the heels, I paid for parking, you know, it's a whole ordeal. If y'all know, you know. So she goes, but promise me one thing, when you get inside the club, don't be all analytical, don't be deconstructing the patriarchy. I was like, okay, I promise, I won't do it. it didn't last very long. So what ended up happening was, so my sister was having a good time. She was dancing. And then I was watching her from the distance. And out of nowhere, I saw her face completely just drop into this like really concerned face. And I couldn't understand why. So I followed the direction of her face to what she was staring at. And there was a man that walked into the club, and he had this shirt on that said "Virgins Wanted." And I'll repeat that again. The shirt said "Virgins Wanted." And it was that moment that I had learned how violent language can be, for that to destroy her in such a way. And so, you know, us being the poets that we are, I wrote about it because, you know, I'm 5'4". I can't confront a man that's 6'8" and be like, listen, we got a problem, you know, while Jay-Z's in the background singing. So I wrote a poem, and here's the last poem. Thank you so much for listening to us today. And we're so excited for your questions. So please come through with the questions. Please support Sims Library, give donations. These are the spaces we need, mi gente, because nobody else is going to make them but us. So please donate. And here's my last poem. And we look forward to your questions. So here we go. To the man at the club with the shirt that reads, "Virgins Wanted." I see you, pretty boy. I see you all pretty. No boy. I see you, hungry dog. I see you, dog, alone. I see you, lonely. I see your good intentions become devil and broken. So explain to me when virgin became job application, became walking billboard, became capitalism stitched on fine cotton thread. I would tell you that these shoulders were born far too heavy, constantly having to convince three sisters that God made man to be more than the butcher who slices off a girl's self-worth, left all bone, no shadow, before a girl can grow into her own body, before a girl can discover voice box and the warning smell of burning flame, before a girl can discover the word no, speak like machete on her tongue. American pastime has turned virgin into a bitter taboo that sleeps between our thighs, painting the flesh of our bodies like cheap fruit. Yo, virgin is not meant to pop like a cherry. Cherries don't even fucking pop. We are not produce to be bruised. We are the genesis of every constellation, every meadow licked down to its last root. Cut us and we bleed, wolf cry and thorn. Mock us and our teeth will bite you back into an ancestry of gospel and sacred church, because there is no shame in trying to keep something holy. So to you, man at the club, I will send you every virgin's crying prayer. I will tell you the story of the girls in Nigeria whose laughter was kidnapped from their father's cracked palms, still missing, still ghost cries lingering amongst the dinner table. I will tell you the story of Emma Solkowitz, who carries her mattress like cold crucifix, still waiting for justice to warm the empty side of her bed sheets. I will tell you the story of my little sister, whose dirty blonde hair ballroom dances at the edges of her shoulders, and at her first job interview, she was asked to twirl, to twerk, to take her clothes off, her stomach now scarred and empty shame. She is still trying to find herself beautiful again. I am constantly reminding her she's always been beautiful. I tell her, sweetie, we inherit woman needing to protect the parts of us we didn't know needed protecting. So be a tall thing, be a mountain without push or pull. Tattoo Aretha Franklin onto your chest and demand respect. Play that shit on repeat and pray that the man at the club is nothing but an ignorant man with an ignorant shirt. And when the monster between his jawbone crave pretty girl and soft knee, remind him that you are not just somebody's daughter, but the very reincarnation of the ocean that gave him permission to speak. Y'all give it up for poems this evening. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Woo, damn.
I'm so excited to bring you back. Thank y'all.
Oh, fire. Woo.
Oof.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I forgot that I was a part of this and I'm not also an audience member, because I was just like, you're so dope.
Wow.
I love you.
I love you too. All right.
So we're gonna go ahead and jump into the Q&A portion of this night. And wow, those poems though, both of y'all, like, wow, blew me away. Like I wanna go and like write a whole bunch of poems and then cry, or maybe cry and write a whole bunch of poems. I don't even know. But it was just, whew, I loved it. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your words with all of us. And yeah, let's open it up for questions. You can just raise your little hand, either your real hand or your Zoom hand, whichever one you'd like.
Or also in the chat, you could also type the questions in the chat because
yeah,
we're all looking at them.
So I see Anne Marie and then Kamari.
Yeah, so listening to your poems, I was wondering if you ever collaborated in like creating poems together, like joint poems that you created as a duo, or if that was even on your radar. Because I'm listening to your poems and you both have similar themes, like you have a lot of like female empowerment, and I feel like with your powers combined, you would have like a like mind-blowing experience.
Yeah, we have a couple of we've been what's on the table is that we're gonna start working on a chapbook together. So that's gonna happen sooner than later. And so then that's on the plan. But I think group pieces, it's like it's funny because we both have been on SAM teams and we've had to write group pieces. But yeah, I'm always down. And I mean, especially listening to her today, Karla, I think it's organically when it gives birth to something and be like, I want to jump in on that. I definitely will tell her. But yeah, it's just a little hard virtually to get that packed down and to get the performance of that down. But I'm just in awe of her and love hearing her work because I just always end up wanting to write something afterwards. So I think it's only a matter of time until I end up being like, I wrote this to your poems, so let's edit them together.
Likewise, right? It's like the energies of the world put us together for a reason. And so I think the word was what Julie dropped in the chat, this like manifesting, is that we're like seeing and rethinking what our words are trying to do and what they're trying to offer. So I think we're just in the middle of making it happen, Yesika, is just to see what's going to be next. But definitely stay tuned. We do have hopefully like a zine or chapbook that'll be out soon to kind of share with y'all.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for your question.
Thank you. That was such a good one too.
Yeah, that's a great question. Those are some great answers. I look forward to a collaborative chapbook from y'all. That sounds really like a great project. So Kamari and then Julie.
Hi. First of all, this night was just amazing. I'm truly blessed to experience you both.
Of course. Thank you for having Kamari. Thank you for coming. That means a lot.
Absolutely. Like I'm really having the best night right now. I'll put in the chat like bubble bath and poems. It's amazing. So I have several questions. I'm just gonna ask one right now and come back. When y'all have very like strong themes in your books. So did the theme when you were crafting your book, did the theme come before or after? Or what was that book writing process like? Were you just writing poems and then the theme came after? Or tell us about that process.
Sure, I can go first. So the process for me was I just knew I loved writing, and I knew that I came from a family that didn't get a background in education, and I knew that I had a family that had a wealth of stories that weren't being documented, a wealth of social injustices that weren't being spoken about. And so I was the first in my family to go to college and to actually be introduced to poetry and literature that at the same time wasn't a mirror. I didn't see myself in anything of that. And so that was even more of a motivation to figure out how to use language to just document stuff that was important to me without even knowing what it was going to transform into. I didn't even think about book. I didn't even think that was a possibility. I just wrote in my journal, in a black journal with my little Lisa Frank gel pens, you know what I'm saying? And then it wasn't till years later that it just took a community to say, look, I think you got something here. We should put it together and see what happens. So I think my first step was like writing what I love, writing what I found important, and then seeing how they spoke to each other. And for about 3 weeks, I put every poem, my partner hated me, but I put every poem and pasted it all over our kitchen. And those poems had breakfast, lunch, and dinner with me for weeks, until I moved things around. And then I began to weave in and notice the themes and the topics that were coming together and working together as a family. But I'm sure Yesika's got also a lot of love to talk about that process.
Yeah, I mean, I've done what I've done it 3 times, and then plus I love doing chapbooks. So I think I had 3 chapbooks before I published my first book, and then I published 3 books, and then I've done 3 chapbooks during the pandemic. I do things in threes apparently, um, and so I mean, yeah, 3 is a big number in my life, but it's always said that your first book, especially for poets, your first book is your easiest book because you've been writing it your whole life. And so Corazon kind of showed up like in its full form and was just like, I'm here. Like it's still, I still, when people like, when I read reviews about it or studied, I'm like, I really was thinking that deep. Like, I don't know. It just feels like I just like pulled it out like Athena, right? Like it just came out. So I don't understand the magic of it all. And that's what I've accepted, that a book is a living, breathing entity that you're birthing, right? And sometimes you're like, this is what my book is gonna be, and your book is just like, bitch, you thought, and then it ends up being something completely different. And so Corazon showed up full and completely, and Tesoro, I knew the story I wanted to tell, but it kept changing. The way that I was telling it kept changing. I wanted to write a fully bilingual book, and I'm not ready for that yet. I still have a lot of things that I haven't, there's still a lot of stories that I haven't told, and I need to do it in just one language because it's like, I got to get them out first. And anyway, so I wanted it to be bilingual. I wanted it to be all these things. And then it showed up in the way that it did. And it was a nightmare. Not a nightmare. That's unfair for the book, but it was very difficult. It was a very, very difficult thing because I didn't realize how exhausting putting a book together was, giving like labor, right? And I did it 3 consecutive years. Corazon was 2017, Tesoro was 2018, and Hermosa was 2019. By the time I got to Hermosa and I was working on Hermosa, I was crying every time I would go sit. And my thing is that when I write the books, I'm a procrastinator and I'm working on it. I have a manager now who yells at me, but when I was writing all of my books, I would give myself office days, which was office hours. So it was 8 hours, and usually most of my books, I put them together in 2-3 weeks, because if I give myself too much time, I start doubting my voice. I start doubting what I'm doing. And mind you, the poems are not written in 3-4 weeks. A lot of these poems have been worked on throughout the years that have been sitting around, and it's about editing and fine tuning them and figuring out what the holes in your story are and what you do need to write to kind of make the book move, or what blind spots you have in your own story. I kept crying, and I had a friend tell me, I was sitting at dinner with Gabby Rivera, shout out, another phenomenal writer. Juliet Takes a Breath, the writer of Juliet Takes a Breath. And she told me, she was just like, I just want, as a fan of your work, I just want you. I want you in your work. And so I learned that like sometimes the theme is not the theme. The theme is you, you know? And like I think many times we get caught up in trying to like outdo ourselves, or we give ourselves this imagined pressure from like our readers and our audience, and we're like, no, they're gonna want something different because I can't do what I did in Corazon, and I can't do what I did in Tesoro. This has to feel completely like da 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 da. And I'm like, no, like that. Gabby was like, no, I just want you. Like I want, you're not the same. Now it's 2019. You weren't who you were in 2018. So like 2017. So I want to know what happened in the last couple of years from you having success and you being on tour and you being this other person. Like, how are you now? And so that's kind of what I try to show up to all my books as. It's like, what's the most authentic version of myself that I could give to you in this manuscript? Because guess what? There's a bunch of other books in me. And I plan to have a whole shelf one day with like my name on all the spines. And I know Karla is capable and probably gonna do that too. Karla, how many books are your dream books? Like how many books to have? Like, do you have like goal?
I mean, so I have one chapbook. I don't. Is it around here? It's called Grasshoppers Before God. So if you want to check that out, let me know. And then I have which this I didn't know was gonna happen. And then I have the first full length, which is with Not a Cult, called How to Pull Apart the Earth. So these weren't even in my dream. Like I was just like, oh shit, I wrote something, and then it just like happened, you know. And you have that imposter syndrome, and even as a writer with like your first book, your second book, your third book, you still go have like moments of imposter syndrome. You're like, do I have more to say, you know? So I think my number of dream books is just the amount I need to before I go. That's pretty morbid. Let me say something more cute. The amount of,
that's
you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know.
You're gonna
like
say everything you need to say before you go.
that,
And
yeah. And
yeah, I don't want to take any poems with me. Like, what you know?
I want to leave them here for people. You know, I want to leave them here for my niece. I want to leave them here for my future nieces and nephews. I want to leave them for my people. I want to leave them for people who need to open it and read that poem. You know. So I'm gonna just we're gonna keep going till we can't no more. And I think that's the number. How about you, Yesika? What's the number?
I mean, Isabel Allende is one of my heroes, and she's like on 20 something, right? And so then I'm like, I don't know if I have 20 something in me, y'all. I don't know, because I'm trying to write my fourth one right now. And I keep telling everybody I'm writing a book. I'm not writing a fucking book. I'm just thinking about it. But that's part of the process too. We have to think and dwell and cry and hit the wall and be like, ugh, like, I peaked. I'm gonna stop because I'm a Cancer. I'll be crying, like thinking everything's over every other day. But we'll move on to the next question.
The waters. I'm a Pisces, so I also cry at like everything. So I feel you. Water signs. So yeah, we have 3 more questions. Julie, then Ravina, and James. So Julie, go ahead.
Hi, mujeres. I actually have 4 questions, but I won't do that to y'all. Maybe I can get back around. So I'm trying to think which is my. So you talked a little bit about. So I just want to say you two are like unas de mis favoritas. Your work is inspiring. You know, the speck of envy that you talked about, Yesika, I totally relate to. Every time I listen to both of your poetry or read your poetry, I become the speck of envy because it's just so beautiful and it resonates so much. You talked a little bit about how, Yesika, about how when you're writing, sometimes you start to doubt yourself. Like if you I don't know if you spend too much on it so like, how do you overcome that where you're in your work, you're looking at it, and then after a while, you're just like, this is not good. At least that's what I do. Maybe I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're just like, oh my God. Like for me, I'm like, okay, maybe this is not as good as, when you write it, when it comes out, you're like, this is great. I love it. And you start tweaking it. And then you're like, wait a minute, is this even good? Like, how do you deal with that? And then another thing too is like, I think as Latinas, sometimes the themes that we talk about, you guys do this really amazing, both of you do this amazing job of not like getting stuck like on like, like making it all a trope or like this, you guys really touch on these issues that touch all of us, and yet they're so personal. So I guess I squeezed in 2 questions, but
no, that's perfectly fine. I'll go first for this one. When a poem start, okay, a long time ago, I decided that what was more important for me was for me to speak my truth than to have a perfect poem. And I surrendered that. I'm like, I'm not that poet. There's some poets that will like pour over a poem for months before it ever sees anybody else and workshop it and whatever. And I commend them. And I think that that's beautiful. And that's a different kind of love for your craft. Right. But I'm someone who grew up being very silenced, being gaslit, being told that my stories weren't valid, that my stories weren't mine. So early in my career, I had to decide like what's more important for me, to be perfect, which I'm not capable of being, especially with my background. Not saying that nobody's capable of being perfect. Like the poem's never going to be perfect, right? But also, I don't come from an academic background. I didn't finish high school. I got pushed out of high school, no college education, just read hella books and went to hella poetry venues and consumed all the poetry I could get my hands on. And that's, I'm self-taught. So then I'm like, I'm okay, either am I gonna do it how everybody else is doing it, or am I gonna figure out how these words make the most sense for me and how I'm gonna get them out into the world. And so that was, I decided that me communicating everything that was in here was more important than anything else. So sometimes, yeah, I'll sit there and I'll start writing a poem. I'm like, this is shit. And like, I'll leave it alone. But then I've learned that if I go back to my poems months later, weeks later, whatever, I'll be reading them like, I'm a fucking genius. Like I was like, why did I leave this poem? Why did I abandon this? And like, but it's like, I don't feel like that all the time, but you gain a different perspective. And I think it's because we get into our own heads and we start comparing our work to each other. And you're like, I already wrote about this breakup. Why am I writing another poem? But it's through a different lens. It's through a different metaphor. It's through a different feeling in the moment. Like I could be mad at the person one day and then I could feel love towards them, but I want to be with like whatever. And then the second one about my stories, not like about not turning my Latinidad and my womanhood into a trope, is that I didn't for the same reason that I didn't come up in academic settings, I didn't know that those were things that happen. I just knew that I wrote poems to get the stuff out of me, and I didn't have, and the people that I read were people that look like me, whose names sound like mine, and black and brown people, black and brown women. And so I never had a voice telling me that I had to sound a specific way because of my identity. And so once I started performing and doing slam and doing those things, yeah, people try to pigeonhole me into certain things, and maybe like I was doing like the bilingual poems or whatever. But if you look at my, if you look at like all the work that I have, I've always written the poems that I love to write. And somebody told me something really early on in my career, and I've held on to it. I got booked for a Latina event, and at the time I felt like I didn't write any Latina poems because I wasn't writing about like what we're told. Like I wasn't writing about pan dulce and flaming hots, you know, like that wasn't what my poems were. And they're still not that. But my friend, who is a black woman, told me, she was like, Yesika, you are a Latina that writes poem. Any poem you write is a Latina poem.
Exactly.
So that's the lens that I look at everything through. Anything I write fits anything that people want to book me for, or anything that they want to fit me into, because those are my identities, and they're going to be brought into everything I write. But I'm also not going to tokenize myself to fit into those spaces, because also it is a poet's job to push what society thinks and what society wants, and to give voice to the people that are not at the forefront of stuff. So yeah, I'll write some stuff that everybody else writes about, but then I also get to bring a different perspective. Like, I'm fat, you know, you don't really ever see people that say it that matter of factly, and I'll say it in my poems like that. And then I know sometimes people are like, she said that, you know, and like that alone has more impact than if I had poured over the poem for a year and then shared it. And so I've just learned how to negotiate with my poetry and keep it as authentic to myself. But I'm going to hand it over to Karla now.
Thanks, Yesika. And shout out to Julia. I had the honor of being her instructor. She was an amazing, talented, still is, writer and community organizer in San Diego. And she was my student at San Diego City College. So shout out to you, Julie. Thanks for coming through. Yeah, so a couple things. One is, I think just what Yesika had said is that time is going to, I had mentioned this before, but that time is going to be your best revision tool. That a lot of times we write, we think it's shit, but if you give it time and you let it sit and you walk away and you come back to it, you're going to see the potential that wants to live, right? That wants to resurrect itself off the page and be what it needs to be. The other thing is like, what kind of community are you surrounding yourself around? Do you have a community of writers that trust your work, have seen you evolve as a writer, that want to not just say, oh, this is a dope poem, it's perfect, but is going to push you to hit the potential that you're capable of, is going to say, yo, you should be reading this and this and this and this, you should be studying this and this and this, you should check this out. So you need to have a community that's pushing you to continue to hit your maximum potential, because if you get too comfortable, and in this case, we're talking about tropes, or writing about pan dulce or hot Cheetos or whatever, you get comfortable and you stay there, then what you're doing is you're minimizing and creating the stigma and the stereotypes of what Latinidad looks like. So if you want to write a poem about hot Cheetos and pan dulce and tortillas, yo, go for it, do it. But what we don't want you to do is feel that that's all you got to say, right? Push the depth of your Latinidad, push the depth of your POC, gender nonconforming identity, push beyond surface level and really say what else is hiding under there that needs to be told. As someone that lives with a recently diagnosed chronic illness, as someone whose partner's wheelchair bound, as someone who, you know, is an educator, as someone who, et cetera, and the list goes on, is that there's depth to our experiences. So do not do the disservice, my people, to limiting your narratives to what's been done. A lot of times we also have to unlearn what we've been taught. So I went through the educational system that all the poems that were fed to me by POC were all about trauma. That was it. And I was like, and this is what I must write about, obviously. So a lot of us are bred into this concept that capitalism calls us to write about constantly, our trauma and gentrification and colonization. And then that we get stuck in that cycle. Do you need to write about it? Absolutely. But once you hit that, at what point do you move from your trauma and enter into spaces of gratitude and joy? Fucking write about a sunflower. You know what I'm saying? Your experience in seeing the growth of that sunflower is going to be interpreted completely different than X, Y, and Z person. So do not limit yourself to trope. Write about the things you love, but then once you hit that end, don't go back. Keep pushing forward and examine the depth of your identity and what hasn't been told, or at least hasn't been told from your perspective. And so I hope that's helpful.
Oh, thank you
Very
for those.
helpful. Thank you both so much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those are very insightful answers. Thank you. Ravina has a question next.
Sure do. It's so beautiful to be in space with you all. Like, I can't even express how much this is needed. Like, I just got off of like a long day at work, and this is just like an exhale. And so thank you, Karla. Thank you, Yesika. This shit really makes a difference. I guess my question was more so along the lines of like, you know, after you release your first book into the world, which is what I'm doing next month on the 30th. So I'm super excited. It's been like kind of my little like baby that's been brewing for a long time, for like 2 years plus now. I'm just wondering if y'all could speak to like how you embrace your brand as a poet. Like, I think like in my head, I for this book, there's a specific like feel to it. There's a specific you know, message in it, or there's certain themes or just elements. And so, but I do like you're saying, if the theme is you and it's always going to be you, mm-hmm. right? Let's say like the next one is, it just feels completely different. And I'm wondering like how you have embraced your brand, but also like kind of left some flexibility in there, if that makes sense. Ways that you make sure people know that like this is a Yesika poem, or like this is a Karla poem, right? But also that we're just humans, so that evolves.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tell you what I saw Karla do that I really loved, right? Because when we witness each other, sometimes we see like when Karla released her book, it was beautiful in the sense that like she shared her excitement about the book, right? Like, I think so many of us try to play cool and be like, I have, you don't know how many poet friends I have that are like so aloof about their books and then get upset when people aren't invested in their books. And I'm like, yeah, bitch, because you act like you hate it. Like, love your book and like get excited, and your readers will get excited about it, you know? And that's the thing, is like not to worry so much about the branding of it, but like of like, what does this book mean to you? And why does it matter to you? Because if I don't know why it matters to you, I don't know why it should matter to me. You know? And so when Karla released her book, How to Pull Apart the Earth, she also was doing stickers with the book. Like, she was giving you stickers with the book, and like doing like these really cute things where it felt really like home, you know what I mean? Like really homey. And she like pulled in people that she loved to do readings with her and to do different things. And I think that was really what was beautiful, because I was able to see right away that she's a woman that is not only like her book is about her people, but also her people are incorporated in the release of the book, you know? And that was really, really beautiful to witness and to be a part of too, because I'm one of her people. And I was able to provide a blurb for her book. And then like, I was so honored, and I was like so excited as the book was coming out. But like, those are the things, right? Like that, we go to poetry looking for ourselves, and we want to see ourselves in the work. So all you have to do is assist people in that image being as clear as possible. Like when I released Corazon, I was fucking excited, and like I was like, bitch, I never thought anybody was gonna want to publish me. Like I was just working at CVS like 6 months ago, and now like here I am like on tour with a book, and like and I would share pictures of people holding the book, and it was like it became a thing where it was like people's hands with my books, and my readers were getting their nails done to like be with Corazon. And so then they were excited to be a part of my promotion, like, which wasn't even promotion, it was just a sharing thing. But when we see people having fun or really enjoying something, don't we want to be a part of it? Don't we like watching it? Like that's why reality TV is so good, because we're like, oh, we feel like we're a part of somebody else's life. And I think that that's part of what we're doing when we release books. And I mean, there I have a little slideshow thing, a slide infographic thing that I've done of how you could ask your community to support you. Ravina, I don't know if you've ever seen me share it. I know Naruto shared it too. And utilize that too. Like tell your readers, no matter if they're 10, 100, 1,000, or 100,000, tell them, I need you to help me make this book be successful. I need you to be a part of this success. So call your libraries, call your bookstores, order it through independent bookstores, because that's, you build relationships with these bookstores too. Call the bookstores that you see that are showing your work the most and be like, I would love to come and do a reading at your bookstore. And so like, and things like that. Like sometimes we try to play too cool, and that's not the name of the game, you know. Like for what? We're It's like, especially when we're telling our raw stories. And I mean, I'll hand it over to Karla now. I get excited when people are going to release books. I want to give you everything that I can give you to be as successful as possible.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, huge congratulations. We know the sweat, lots of crying, joy, tears, like that all comes together when putting a book together. So huge congratulations on that accomplishment. I'm gonna have to agree with Yesika. Like, definitely go to her page and check out the tips you can offer to your community on how they can support you, because sometimes they don't know. And when you can offer that knowledge to them, it makes the biggest difference. Now, when my book came out, I knew I wanted to have an intimate connection with my readers, especially readers that were reaching out from different parts of the world saying like, oh my gosh, your poem connected with me. I'm going through the same thing. And so I immediately knew that these experiences were being bridges to people who had been going through the same thing. So I wanted to create a way to have this kind of intimate relationship with my readers, because a lot of times we need to find the line between humility and like super high pedestal ego. And a lot of us will be like, oh, my book's coming out, check it out, you know. But you work so hard on manifesting that thing that you should be celebrating it, and you should be sharing it with your family. So, and it deserves you know, that birthday party that it's been working so hard to become. So when we think about brand, it does get tricky, because we're writers, we're artists, you know, we're like, government. But at the same time, we also have to realize that there's a business aspect to when releasing a book. So you could think of the business aspect as this like building community, and how to bridge your poems and your personal experiences to your writers or to your readers, and having that experience come back, then it's going to do well. It's going to speak, and you have to remind yourself, why the hell did you write the book? I wrote the book because I didn't want to leave this world unghosting myself and nobody knowing my family and its legacy. I wrote the book because I needed to live in the world, because nobody else is going to speak of my ancestors. Nobody else is going to speak about my mom's hard work ethic. Nobody else is going to speak about the experiences of mi gente that are undocumented. Nobody's doing it. If not, it's maybe a statistic, but there's no humanization in it. So always remind yourself, why is the book put together? How do you want it to live and breathe in the world? And what is it that you can do to not just making sure your publisher or independently published, is it that it's circulating, but that you're giving it the love it deserves. And so as long as you stay true to how you put your book together, why you put it together, and how you want your experience to be with your readers, and stay genuine to that, you're going to be okay. The other thing is a lot of folks end up with that imposter syndrome. Y'all do it. I know I've done it. You go on Instagram and you see all these people's successes and how they're launching their book and you're like, oh my gosh, I suck, right? And it's like, don't get trapped under that stigma. It's like, if I learned anything from Yesika is that there's no one path. There's multiple paths in defining success. As long as you have complete joy and compassion in what you're doing, you make your own path. Don't be looking at folks and saying, I got to do it that way. You do it the way you want to justify the love of what you've created. So just remember that. And like I said, I hope that was helpful, and good luck, and congratulations on your upcoming book.
Yes, Romina, I just want to add one more thing. Like, comparison is a thief of joy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Please don't, I'm not saying that you're doing this, but any of you that are thinking of putting out any kind of project, please don't compare it to anybody else that you've seen do anything. One, social media is tricky, and depends where your mental health is when you're looking at something. It could seem bigger or smaller than what it is. And it's not that the other person on the end might not even be manipulating anything. They're just sharing facts of their life, but whatever. Like, I could see one of my friends doing something dope, and on a good day, I'm like, good for her. And then on a bad day, I'm like, why wasn't I booked for that? You know what I mean? And then I got to check myself right away and be like, bitch, that, like, there's enough for all of us. It wasn't you today. It's her today, you know, whatever. But when my first book came out, Corazon, like, I had no expectations, right? And luckily it was met with an immense amount of love. But what I do wish that somebody would have told me was that to just be present in it. I was so worried about checking off, like, I want to sell 10,000 copies. I don't even know what it was that I wanted, you know, but once I saw that it was doing well, I wanted more, right? Like, I wanted it to go more, and that's normal. But there's a difference between saying, like, fuck, it's not doing more, to it would be great if more happened. See, there's that difference. So just have that notion for anybody that does anything, because like, if not, you don't pay attention, and then you miss the joy of it. Like, you know, we both got published with an independent publisher, and then I see friends that have gotten deals with HarperCollins, and sometimes I'm like, what the you know, like, what the hell? Like, why? How come they've never approached me? And I don't even know how many people they had to pitch to before they got there, or how many agents they went. You know, we don't know anything of their story, of what it took to get to that thing. But it's easy to look and be like, I don't have that, and that will take all your joy. But anyway, okay, I'm done.
Do we have time for one more question? How are y'all feeling? Yeah. Okay. James.
I think your audio maybe on mute. It could be
You're muted, James.
Can you hear me now?
There you are. Hi.
Yay. Okay. Hi, everyone. So several of us are in the CLI program, and we're going to be, completing our book soon, and pitching to publishers. And I was just wondering if y'all had any advice for what to look for with the publisher, or how to present ourselves, in a positive way to them. And then I guess the second part of that question is, did you have to convince your publisher to get on board with the story you wanted to tell about your heritage, and it being very personal, and being, Latinx individuals?
Do you want to go first, Karla?
Sure, I'll go first. Yeah, and then I'll have Yesika jump in. So a couple things is, at least the homework I did on my end is, when I was pitching my manuscript, I made sure I wasn't just throwing it to any publisher because I was hungry and I was desperate. I did my homework. I looked at the publisher. I looked at their mission statement. I looked at the masthead. How many of those editors were POC? How many of those editors were women versus men? How many of the authors that have been published, the diversity, the equity distribution of who were they publishing, and did I love who they were publishing? So I really did homework to see the publisher, who they stood for, and who they were publishing and how they were celebrating the writers versus making us a commodity for income. So you really want to do all of that back work. And the moment someone says yes, don't hit the green button and be like, done. You need to look at the contract. You need to look at royalties. You need to see what percent. You need to see how they're going to market and celebrate you, because you really don't want to become, just another book to put on the catalog, but you also want to be, I looked for family is what I looked for, is what I'm trying to get at. So when I was pitching to like Write Bloody was one of the publishers I loved, or Bud and Poetry, and then I saw Not a Cult, is I knew immediately the poets they published all felt like family. And they were all writers that stood for social justice and empowerment. And I loved those themes as well. So the moment that I saw that kind of nurturing state of what I loved, then I went ahead and pitched them. My experience was different. Mine was a competition. So I had to go through a bunch of manuscripts to then have my book accepted. But nonetheless, look for those things, do your homework. And how do you present yourself? You present yourself authentically true to yourself. Don't be no one you're not. But at the same time, have your shit together. Like, your manuscript is a representation of you. You know what I'm saying? So whatever you present, that's what you're releasing into the world. And so you want to love it as much as you love what you do. And I'm gonna hand it over to Yesika, because I'm sure she got more to say.
Yeah, I mean, like both of our stories are kind of unique and different than the traditional publishing way, because Karla came out of a competition. I was approached by Not a Cult because I've been sharing my work on the internet for 18 years. Like, like I'm a person that if you want to come looking for me, you could find all my shit. Like, it's there, And so I was I was doing poetry, like at the poetry lounge, going to any open mic, anywhere. Like, I knew that this is what my life was. This is what I wanted my life to be, whether somebody got on board or not. So that's kind of a good thing, for an attitude for you to have. Like, this book is going to be published whether you publish it or not. So are you gonna be the one that's gonna publish it? Like, are you gonna be on board? Like, do you want to get onto my train? Because I'm not getting onto yours. and I had been offered a different independent publisher before Not a Call approached me, and like the people were lovely. I had a good friend that had been published by them, but they just didn't feel like me. It didn't fit. It didn't. And they were lovely, very lovely, like very, but it just didn't. I was just like, this doesn't feel like it's what I need. And like, it's just not it. And I kept saying no. And then when Daniel Lisi from Not a Cult sat across from me, I knew that it was fine, because he came to me. We met in the coffee shop where I wrote all my books, right? Like, at the time I hadn't written my books, and then basically he was just like, we're gonna, like, I don't even know if you have a manuscript, but we want to publish you. And then he's just like, how long do you think you could take to do a manuscript? And I was just like, X amount of time. But and I know that that's a very privileged position that I was in, because by the time that Daniel offered me a book, I had already established myself as a poet in Los Angeles, right? And was starting to become a national voice in the poetry scene. But that's always, but the thing is that for me, and it's a saying that I say any opportunity I get to get it, my whole motto has been, I have no interest in climbing the mountain. I want to teach the mountain how to kneel. And that's what it was. Not to say that Daniel came and knelt with me, but I'm talking about the institution of literature. I know that my voice is different than most people that get published, right? And so I knew that the right person was going to come knocking. So as you're pitching to people, don't let them shake you. Don't let them rattle you. No one knows your story better than you. And if you're sitting across from someone and they're not giving you the offer you want, or they're not checking for you, then they're not who should have you. They're not who should be there, because your book is your life. It's your words. It's your thoughts. I've had, I used to write for a publication. I had a column, and the minute it felt fucked up, I left. The minute I felt kind of like I wasn't being respected, they fired my editors and never explained it to me. And then we're going to give me different editors that I had no relationship with when I had developed my column with my editor. The minute that happened, I was just like, oh, you don't care about my work. You care about my reader, my following. So you're not for me. you know, that I'm gonna bounce. And so now I'm entering a very scary world, and I'm probably gonna be on your, like, sitting in your, like, in that seat in a while, where now I have an agent, and my next book won't be with Not a Cult, not because anything is wrong with Not a Cult. I love Not a Cult, but my readership and myself, I've grown to a point where I want to see what it is to be with a large, to have the machine behind me, and I might end up hating it and never do a book that way again. But it's something that I need to do. But like, in as I've been talking with my agents and getting ready to start pitching the book, I have to keep reminding myself, I have no interest in climbing this mountain. I have no interest in modifying my story to fit this industry. I need to teach this industry why my voice is important. Like, they need to learn why my voice is important. And if they don't get on this train, then they're the ones that are missing out. And that's true for all of us, any of you that are writing and getting ready to release your book. Your stories are a gift that you give people, and whoever gets the opportunity to bring it out into the world and to kind of be the midwife to your story, that's an honor that they're going to be receiving. And then also, make sure you read those contracts, make sure the royalties feel good. Always have people around you that you can ask questions to, seek mentors, seek people that have gone down that road before. You know, reach out to people that have been published by those publishers and ask them what their experience with those publishers are. Like, you could always ask Karla or I about Not a Cult, and we'll genuinely tell you what we love and if there's anything that could be improved or compared to somebody else or whatever. But it's just like, also use all your resources so that we never walk into anything, because this world is full of gatekeeping, and you need to find the people that are not keeping the doors closed and are willing to open them for you. And there's no shame in asking for someone to help you open a door, because guess what, white people be doing this shit all the fucking time, and so why can't we? Boom, bye. I end all my shows, white people do this all the time, why shouldn't we? That's gonna be our tagline, Karla.
Yeah, that was a really great ending to that, to the show, to that question. I just wanted to thank you so much, Yesika and Karla, for coming. And I know y'all stayed like 30 minutes extra answering all these questions. So thank you so much for your time and your energy and like your wisdom. Like, I was like, I'm also getting ready to pitch my manuscript. So I'm part of CLI. So this was so helpful. Very grounding. So thank you so much for being here. And thank you everybody for coming through as well, and supporting. And we appreciate all of you. But yeah, I think that about wraps it up. Unless Yesika or Karla, you want to add any last parting words?
I always just say, this is not the end of our communication, that we continue to be familia, that we are a forever resource to you. So follow us on Instagram, reach out anytime you have a question or need us to somehow be a resource, and then we're always there for you. So thank you all for coming through today.
What's our Gmail? Juntas Tour at Gmail?
Oh yeah, I'm gonna drop it in the chat. So if y'all ever have questions, you can send it to us. It is juntastour@gmail.com. So anytime, email us there as well.
Yeah, please. I mean, I know so many of you are getting ready. Like, I'm so glad this is intimate, because we were able to give you like all the answers that you needed, and like all of you were ready. So like, anything that you need, please. We're in community with each other, and what's the point of us having gone through all of this stuff and having the knowledge that we have if we can't be a resource for you? And so, and if we need to draw a boundary, we're both really good at articulating that. Mm-hmm. So ask, and the worst that we could say is, sorry, I can't, or sorry, not right now. Mm-hmm. And that's it.
Yep.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, everybody. Woo, woo, woo.
I'm hype on caffeine. Bye.
Appreciate you. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye,
thank
everyone.
You so much,
thank
Caro.
you. Yeah, no, thank you.
So much.
Yeah, this was
great.
amazing.
Thank you so much.